good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the Metta Centre. So good to familiarise yourself here and to meet you all here. There's some new faces and some people who've come from other places as well. And we were doing a bit of market research just now in terms of where people have come from, and they really have come from all over Sydney. Yeah.
Wow.
But
wow.
I think so far you probably came the furthest.
Right.
So thanks,
yes,
Jeff.
yes.
So welcome everyone, and I would also like to welcome Jeff Oliver here, and so thankful for him to be able to share his time and his experience and his teachings here today at the Metta Centre. And the course that he'll be doing with us today is a day course on forgiveness for everyone, and that's based on the title of his book, Forgiveness for Everyone, and that's available online if anyone's interested to read it. And of course the answer is yes, we're all interested to read it. Now, Jeff grew up at Shelly Beach, where he came from today as well. So he's still there.
Yep.
And trained as a Buddhist monk for 9 years in Burma. And throughout that time, he learned many great qualities of the heart, of which forgiveness is one of the most important. Jeff has been teaching meditation for over 20 years. And he has found that forgiveness is perhaps the greatest foundation and preparation for meditation and for being a great person, living in peace and harmony with a loving heart. Forgiveness is an important part of our spiritual practice, and I really hope that you all enjoy today's session and get something from it as well. So without further ado, enjoy yourself. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Tina. So please make yourself comfortable. Just let go of anything that you're holding on to. Well, our format for today will be just to maybe do a little bit of meditation first. If you don't mind, I can guide you in a short meditation, and then I'll open up to the topic for this afternoon. We'll have a little break halfway through, and we'll finish off with some questions and answers, discussion, and what have you. So, the main meditation that I do is Vipassana meditation, which is, I have to assume that perhaps you don't know anything. Maybe you come here, or maybe you know more than me, I don't know. But, so I'll just assume that you're new. You're definitely new to me. So, Vipassana meditation is simply mindfulness meditation, or mindfulness and insight. And also I use the terms awareness and wisdom as well. So whenever we apply mindfulness or awareness to our body and mind in the present moment, which is our current reality, then we may see or feel, experience something in its true nature, which we may not normally experience due to our busyness of our mind or being caught up in the external world. So bringing your attention, your awareness back to your body and mind in the present moment may help you to see something about yourself, about your life, which may change your life. So seeing something that you haven't seen before is insight, a little flash of wisdom. When you get many little flashes of wisdom, these become a greater wisdom. And this greater wisdom is then what we continue to carry into our life. And this is how life changes. And it's a very beautiful journey. It's a very beautiful flow that when we understand this flow, it's really very peaceful. It's very harmonious. It's very simple. It's far more simple than we really understand. Even meditation techniques, and if you read books on Buddhism, etc., it can seem very complicated. Sometimes we get confused. We're not really sure, should I be doing this kind of meditation or that kind of meditation? However, when you practice mindfulness and you just come back to what's happening here and now, which is being taught by some of the most amazing teachers on the planet at the moment, like Eckhart Tolle and a few other great spiritual teachers. All they're suggesting is that you just come back to what's happening in your body and mind right now. And of course the Buddha taught this 2,500 and something years ago. So we can practice just a little bit of that now. Again, I'll just assume that you don't know anything, so forgive me for just prompting you and perhaps guiding you a little bit. But just make yourself comfortable. Let go of anything that you're holding on to physically, and if you can, mentally. One thing that the Buddha taught very often, you find it throughout the suttas, the teachings, he was teaching awareness of our senses. I find it very simple and quite relaxing to just come back to my senses. All of your physical senses, your 5 physical senses, are only happening in the present moment. They may have happened in the past, they may continue into the future. However, your present moment experience is based on what you experience at your senses. So just listen to the sounds around. And it's nice to drop any resistance or any judgment about the sound, but just hearing. A very simple question you might like to ask yourself, just a little experiment. Am I hearing now? And just in those few moments after you ask the question, the mind stops. It's just checking. It's mindful. It's aware. It doesn't need to think. Just try it again. Am I thinking now? Oh, sorry. Am I hearing now? Am I feeling the body now? Am I breathing now? Just gently feeling each in-breath and each out-breath. Relaxing as you breathe in, relaxing as you breathe out. And enjoy breathing. Enjoy each in-breath and each out breath. And enjoy the awareness of the sensation, feeling each in-breath and each out-breath. And a thought may arise in your mind, perhaps about the past or the future. You can simply acknowledge it and gently come back to the breath and relax. Relax your shoulders, your face. Just feeling the in-breath, the out-breath. And feel the breath coming deeper into the body. Notice how your body moves a little bit with the breathing. The chest, even the abdomen, the stomach moves a little bit. Gently extend your awareness to feel your arms, your hands, and your legs, and your feet. And feel your face, your whole body. This is the sense of feeling, one of the 5 physical senses. And again, be aware of hearing. And gently smell the air. And taste your mouth, whatever taste there may be. When your eyes are closed, you may see some colour or light. When you're ready, in your own time, you may open your eyes. Be aware of seeing. And check your mind. Am I thinking? Am I aware? Am I present? Am I relaxed? So it's a nice, simple meditation, checking your senses, feeling the breath, being present, checking your mind. If you like, you can move. Sit comfortably as you wish. Always like to start with a little meditation that seems to bring everybody's mind to the present moment, to here and now. Helps you to concentrate a little bit. I think all meetings, all gatherings of people should start with some bringing together of the minds. You may remember what it's like to be at school or at lectures at university or something where there may be 20, 30, 40, 50 people there, but their minds are all in different places and the teacher's trying to teach and seems to be lost in the ether. But when we bring our minds to our body, especially coming back to our senses, to what's happening here and now, you feel more calm, more concentrated. You're actually more ready to learn, to absorb new information. So, as I said, please sit comfortably. If you would like to record what I say this afternoon, I know it's already being recorded, but if you'd like to record it yourself, feel free to do that. If you'd like to take notes, that's also very useful, either on your phone or by writing notes down. Because what I'm going to give you this afternoon is a technique. It's actually a step-by-step way of investigating your mind. And it's not a hard and fast technique. It can be played with as you wish. You can use it according to your own circumstances, or your own conditioning, how you feel. This technique came to me as an email many, many years ago when I was still a monk in South Africa, actually. My teacher had a monastery in South Africa, a Burmese Buddhist monastery, so I was one of the teachers there. And I got this email that had forgiveness in 3 parts. And I found it really curious. The first part was to forgive yourself for harming others. The second part was to forgive yourself for harming yourself. And then only the third part was to forgive others for harming you. And I'd never heard of this before, even through Buddhist teachings. Yes, there was probably mention of forgiving yourself, but there wasn't any technique. So I took the simple technique that came in this email, I actually practiced it, and then I developed my own technique out of that. So what I'm going to offer you today is really my own experience, my own technique. As we mentioned, it is in a book called Forgiveness for Everyone. And it's also available to download for free. So feel free to download it. In that case, you don't need to make notes because you can just download it and read it for yourself. The reason why I wanted to put it in book form was because I'm lazy to talk all the time. I thought I could just hand people a book, here, just do it yourself. So it is actually a do-it-yourself book. And the beauty of it being in a book is that you can refer back to it and you can go back to it again. Whereas if you just come to a talk, you could sit here for the next 2 or 3 hours and go, oh yeah, this is really nice, it's really good stuff, you know, forgiveness is a good thing, and you agree with it. But you go home and you know what our memories are like. Even our listening capacity is very limited. Actually, it's probably not limited, but the way we use it is very limited. So we tend not then to really focus on the practice or do it very specifically. We may do it generally, you might pick up some new tips, but if you've got basically a handbook or something that you can come back to and remember and refer to and repeat the exercises, it's in the beginning it seems quite formal, learning the technique and repeating the system, but then as time goes by it starts to become easier, you start to personalize it, it starts to become your own way of thinking, and in fact when you have really worked on your own forgiveness, when you've learned how to forgive yourself for harming others, forgive yourself for harming yourself, and even then being able to forgive others for harming you, it becomes so easy that you almost just think of forgiveness and it's already, the process has already happened. So what I'm offering you in the beginning may seem a little technical, it may seem a little awkward to remember the steps, but you can personalize it yourself, and as you practice it, you will find that it becomes a lot more fluent, it becomes your own thought stream and your own way of practicing forgiveness. The reason I wrote about forgiveness is because, not only because I'm lazy to talk about it, but also because I was trained in Vipassana meditation. It's the only meditation that I've continued throughout all these 20 plus years of my practice. And I lead meditation retreats, mostly overseas, in various countries. So what I found was that people come to retreats, and especially if a retreat is a little bit longer, like more than 10 days, if it's 2 weeks or even longer, even on a short retreat, people can be very caught up in their past. And if you are trying to meditate in the present, but your mind's busy thinking about the past, which could be this morning, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, 10, 20, 30, whatever years ago, then you're so caught up in what happened in the past that you can't be present. And this is where people will say, and they report to the teacher, oh, I keep thinking about the past, I'm struggling with the past, I'm trying to work through old trauma or things like this. So this forgiveness is a way that you can overcome these living in the past or reliving the past. And what I wrote on the back of my book as just a little tempting quote, many people don't need to meditate, they need to do forgiveness, which is a pretty bold statement. But I believe if anyone, especially anyone who has a lot of trouble with their past, if they practice forgiveness, really, really practice forgiveness, they will become so mindful, because it's also a mindfulness practice. You can't do forgiveness without awareness being present. I use awareness and mindfulness interchangeably, by the way, so it means the same thing. You can't do forgiveness without being mindful. And so it already develops a type of mindfulness, especially mindfulness of the mind, where we do experience our suffering and our mental problems and our thoughts about the past, our memories from the past. So by working on forgiveness, it helps you to clear the past. If you can quite well clear the past, it means you're already in the present. So if you're in the present, you probably don't need to meditate because you're already present. And it also helps you to let go of those things that keep recurring, those thoughts that keep coming back and blocking you in the present. The mindfulness then of those things will then help you as you continue to practice in your mindfulness practice. So it has many benefits. Then, so even if you feel that you don't really need to do forgiveness now, some people say, oh, I don't need to do forgiveness, or I've already done forgiveness, or things like that. It's still handy to have a technique that if in the future, while you go down along your journey, especially the journey of meditation and spiritual journey, there may be things that you thought that you'd cleared up in the past, or things that you didn't even realize would pop up again in the future. So you never know when you've actually really cleared your past. So it's still handy to have this technique whenever problems arise. And the other reason for having a good technique for forgiveness is that if somebody else that you know is having problems with their past and their mind, etc., you can offer them something a little more concrete rather than just say, oh, you need to do forgiveness, but actually offer them a technique that they can pick it up and run with it, or actually use the technique. So the first part to forgiveness, the first step, I'll call it, is to forgive yourself for harming others. Now, this is in conformity with most of the Buddha's teachings. I've realized that it's all about coming back to yourself. Instead of looking out into the world, trying to fix the world, or even trying to observe the external world, which most of us do naturally, Buddha's teachings is usually, mostly asking us to come back into our own mind, to check with ourselves first. So here, forgiveness is doing the same thing. How did I harm others? Instead of trying to forgive others who harmed us, how have I harmed others? So you can do this as a distinct practice for yourself. You could have even a daily forgiveness practice, and you can go through the steps as I'm offering. So you can ask yourself, who did I harm? Now, it could be just somebody from this morning. It could have been 10 minutes ago. You know, you maybe came here with a family member, or you had some disagreement with somebody in a shop or a taxi driver or something, and you might have been angry, you might have said something that upset that person. Or it could be from yesterday, it could be from work, it could be about your boss, it could be any partner or relationship that you have in your life. It's very common that when we are not mindful in our speech, actions and thoughts, that we do harm other people. It's for most of us, it's a normal part of life. In fact, it's so normal that most people don't even realize that it's happening. You don't realize that you are harming other people in your life. And that's because we are unaware. We don't realize how harmful we can be. Most of us think that arguing in a relationship is normal, and that it's just normal that you have arguments, and then you make up after the argument, and then you go along for a while, and then you have another argument, and then you make up again. And for most people, I believe this is the normal way of not only a relationship with a partner, but also your relationships in families. And some families, it's so normal that everybody's arguing and almost abusing each other that they don't even see that that's not normal. It's so normal that it's just a part of life, which is a bit sad, I must say. So you reflect on yourself and just ask yourself, Who did I harm? It's best not to go to somebody or think about somebody with whom you have a very deep, long and complicated relationship. It's better to start with somebody that you just have a simple maybe problem or a misunderstanding with. It could be just somebody at work, it could be just somebody you know, or you could just pick one little incident that happened with your partner or with somebody that you're in a long-term relationship, like your mother, your father, or family member or something. And just choose one little incident. So, who did I harm is the question. Somebody pops up in your mind. And then ask yourself, how did I harm this person? Was it by speech, action, or thought? So these are the three modes of karma. These are the three actions that people are doing every day in their life. They're speaking, they're acting, and they're thinking. All of these are causes, and all of them have effects. This is our human life. It's one way to describe your human life, is you speak, you act, and you think. It's very simple, it's very basic. But all of these are causes and all of them have effects. Even your thoughts. People think, oh, they're my thoughts. They don't affect anybody or anything. However, but it affects your karma. And your thoughts are creating your speech and your actions. So they're inextricably? Yeah, which means connected. Yeah. I just confused myself with a big word. You won't hear me using too many big words, and if you want to read a really simple book, just pick up my book. It's really simple. It's all interrelated and interconnected. So your speech, your actions, your thoughts. Now, how did I harm this person? Was it just by speech? Or was it by action? Or was it simply by thought? It sounds a bit strange that you could harm somebody only by thought, but they are actually measuring these days that thoughts actually have a field. They manifest in a field around us. So a thought, have you ever been standing next to somebody or been with somebody? It could be somebody you know or even a stranger, and you just feel a really bad vibe from them?
Yes.
Or, yes. For some sensitive creatures, this is a daily event. Some of us who are a little more thick-skinned, we may not know what I'm talking about. But on the other hand, sometimes you can be near somebody and feel a very loving, very soft and warm and beautiful presence as well. Isn't that right? Yeah. So, these are not only coming from their thoughts, but of course their general persona, their mental state, and their general state of being as they are at that time. So even sometimes when a person walks into a room, especially when you're doing meditation, and if somebody comes in, not only do they come in late and didn't join the meditation, then they're a bit sort of anxious or something from outside, but it's almost like you can feel like a wave of energy coming from this person. And they might have been, they might have just had an argument or something, and they kind of come into the room like a cyclone or something. So we can definitely feel people's energies. And this is also coming from their thoughts. The thoughts that they're having are generating their emotions, which generates the energy. And we can pick up on this. And it could be harmful to some extent. So, was it speech, actions, or thoughts? Or I even add, for multiple choice, D, all of the above, which in the case of a partner or a relationship that you're with someone, then usually we hurt them by speech, actions, and thoughts. So it can be all of the above. So what I'm doing here is by asking these very specific questions, what I'm doing is I'm objectifying your investigation. Because what you would normally do when you think about your relationship with somebody, or you think about the argument that you had or the situation, your mind, Mr. or Mrs. Ego, will always justify itself and confirm itself to be right. Have you noticed that? That everybody else is wrong and you're always right? And it really just doesn't matter whether you're a nice person or not a nice person. Even nice people just think they're right all the time. And angry people, etc. And you don't have to be a politician to think that you're right all the time and everybody else is wrong, etc. So it's just a normal situation of the human ego, that we tend to believe that we are right and everybody else is wrong. So we then go into a justification mode when we're replaying the story of what happened with that person, maybe an argument or some kind of a fight or disagreement or something, verbally, physically or mentally. Then we go into justification and we start saying, well, she shouldn't say that, she was in the wrong, or he can't do that, and I was right because I did. And so we go back into the story. When you get back into the story, you're lost. And you've been over this story like 100 times, 1,000 times. And again, this comes back to when you're trying to meditate. I don't know if any of you have done long meditation retreats like we do in Burma or Thailand and such places. But these meditation retreats are, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year long retreats. So when you're meditating in a silent retreat, you're not interacting with other people, you've got a lot of time to think. That's not what the meditation's for. But you end up thinking a lot and stuff comes up. But actually this is what a meditation retreat is for, especially a mindfulness meditation retreat. Because in mindfulness training, we're not stopping thoughts. Thinking is a human nature. So what we're doing is we're observing them and we're allowing them to come up. It doesn't mean you have to follow them and enjoy them and go on and think about them, but we're watching the nature of thought. And so in long-term retreats, all this old stuff starts bubbling up to the surface of your mind. And that's when you start going back into stories. Things come up that you don't even remember that you remembered them. You think that this thing was finished and forgotten, 30 years ago. And here you are, trying to be all peaceful and zenned out in some, meditation center, or in my case, I was a Buddhist monk in Myanmar, sitting in a meditation hall, surrounded by Buddhist monks and nuns and whatever. And, old stuff's coming up, and, you're having this argument again, and it's replaying in your mind, and this old stuff's coming up. You're almost boiling, sitting there in your mind. And you get lost in this, you get caught up in it. It's nice when that stops. It's there, isn't it? Oh, it sounds like it's coming from this side. Yeah. So we get stuck in these old mental states, and we're in there trying to justify ourselves, trying to prove ourselves right. And this is where what we need to do is we need to develop an objective awareness. This is what I try to encourage people to do in Vipassana meditation, is to develop an objective awareness of mental processes and physical processes. But the same thing in this forgiveness practice, that we can objectively see the story from the past and not try to solve the problem, because that's what you end up doing. You end up lost in the thoughts, going around and around and again, trying to think through what happened with that person. But you've done this 1,000 times and it hasn't solved the problem. And if you're not aware of that, you could continue for the rest of your life trying to replay old stories of your mind to sort them out, to logically think through them again and again to solve these things. And to be honest, many of them really can't just be solved like that. Because the thing happened 30 years ago. How are you going to solve it in your mind? Actually, it's only happening in your mind. Even that thing, actually you can bypass forgiveness. If you really are wise enough to realize that that's already dead and gone, you can quantum leap straight past forgiveness and almost get to enlightenment. But there's not too many people who do that. We're still stuck in our ego, we're stuck in ourselves, we're stuck in our thoughts about who we were, and then we're trying to solve things from the past. So this forgiveness practice is to help you to facilitate how to see these thoughts objectively and not getting subjectively involved in them again and trying to work them out, even reasonably or logically. So, the questioning is quite succinct and quite straightforward. The next question that comes up is, why did I harm this person? Again, there's 4 multiple choice answers. I like multiple choice. I was happy at school when they brought in multiple choice. It was like I didn't have to think too much. So it's got to be one of these. Anyway. Was it because I was greedy or selfish? I like the word selfish. It's rather normal for a human mind to be selfish. Was I greedy or selfish? Was I angry or was I confused? Those of you Buddhists who would know from the Pali words, lobha, dosa, moha. Greed, hatred and delusion. Just 3 common mental states that we all experience. And of course the 4th one is all of the above. So when I was with that person and I was arguing or whatever, and I harmed that person, was I being selfish? Was it all about me and I didn't care about them? Or was I just angry and just said whatever I wanted to say, again not caring about them? Or was I just confused? And quite often confusion will also cause the greediness and the anger. Or maybe it was just all of these things all mixed up together and you're not even sure what kind of mental state you have. Then the next question is, was I aware? When I harmed that person, was I aware that I was harming them? Now this is a really interesting question. It's an important question. Most of the time, we were not aware. And then, so the answer is a simple answer. It's a yes/no question. So usually the answer is no. Some rare occasions you may have harmed somebody with awareness because you had to. Maybe it was for their better or something like that. But again, that could be justification. And then the next question is, was I wise? Was I wise when I harmed this person? Usually you'll find the answer to be no. It's pretty rare that wisdom will harm anybody. Wisdom is not a harmful mental state. However, there may be some rare situations where you had to wisely harm somebody in order to save them. You know, like cut off his leg to save his life or something. But in the scheme of things, you were still doing a good thing. So, and wisdom was present. So, these questions, was I aware? Usually the answer is no. Was I wise? Probably not. Almost you could say definitely not. Then the next question is, am I sorry? Am I sorry that I harmed this person? Now, if you are not sorry that you harmed this person, then there's no point in trying to do forgiveness for them. with them. So scrap that person, go back to the first question, who did I harm? Because there's no point continuing, because you're not going to forgive yourself. Start with a new person. Start again, who did I harm? Let somebody else pop up on the screen of your mind, and then go back through these points. However, if you do feel that you are sorry that you harmed that person, then you answer to yourself, yes, I'm sorry. And then the next bit is a little bit of a contemplation, and that is, well, that's how I was in the past. It's not how I want to be now, and it's not how I want to be in the future. I'm changing. I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm understanding myself now. That's how I used to be. It's not how I am now and not how I want to be in the future. So this is a contemplation of past, present and future. And then you may realize that you are ready to forgive yourself. You might even say to yourself, I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. These are words that we don't normally speak to ourselves. We've not been taught to say them, and it's not usually something that somebody would just think about by themselves, that they forgive themselves without having been taught to do it. I can't remember myself ever having that thought in my life prior to understanding Buddhism, meditation and my own mind. So to say these words, I forgive myself, and to listen to the words, to allow them to echo through the corridors of your mind. Allow the meaning of the words to soak in to your mind. Allow yourself to absorb this meaning. Listen to yourself. Do you believe yourself? Do you accept these words? Is it possible that you can forgive yourself? I forgive myself. You can say it as many times as you like. You can even turn it into a little mantra if you want to. You can say it 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. You could do your little Buddhist mala mantra 108 times on your beads if you want to. I forgive myself, I forgive myself, I forgive myself. Not just merely repeating words, but listening to the meaning. I forgive myself. Am I allowed to do that? Or is it dependent upon others? Should it only be others who forgive me? Can I forgive myself? If I can't forgive myself, then is my forgiveness and my freedom only dependent upon other people forgiving me? That sounds a bit like prison. Can I forgive myself? So this is a nice little exercise, especially if you've never done it before, to just sit with those words. I forgive myself. If you can forgive yourself, you'll feel it. You'll know what it feels like. I don't want to explain it to you. I'd like you to find it for yourself. One thing I can say though is it's very beautiful if you're able to do that. And then, just to finish off, is we can say the words, may he or she, you can use their name if you like, be free from suffering. May he be free from suffering. May she be free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. So it's a little bit of compassion, just to soften out the mind, maybe help to patch up the relationship again. And then you can start again. The first step of forgiveness can be practiced many times, and it can be practiced again and again and again and again. In fact, I recommend people to stay only with the first step as long as you can. As long as you feel it's serving you. And for some people, it means a really long time. Depending on how intensively you practice it, or, I guess that same thing. That is how often you practice it. If it was a daily practice, or it was coming up several times in a day, then it may not take too long at all. But if you're only doing it every now and again, it may take a long time. Or, depending on your karma, depending on your ability to understand what true forgiveness really means, then some people can do this several times and realize that there are some actual little keys to the mind that are in this practice. Once you open up a few of these doors in the mind, you can actually, if you forgive yourself for harming even one person in a particular way, and then you suddenly realize, I harmed many people in the same way, what you're doing is you're forgiving yourself for the action of harming all those people, then it's as if you've forgiven yourself for harming all those people. So you don't have to go through individually one by one. You're forgiving yourself for the actual, the mental state, or the way that you harmed this person, or this person, and then these people. And this transforms your character. And if you do this very well, then the way you harmed all of those people in your life, from now on, it's very likely that you won't cause that harm anymore, because you've woken up to it. You've realized how you're causing harm to people. And this is the purpose of forgiveness. It's to free your mind, not only in the present, but free your mind from repeating the same mistakes in the future. And this is a really important point. And this is what we can call freedom. And it's a really beautiful example of how karma unfolds. And if I learn something now, and I realize how harmful I've been in the past, and I see that harm within myself, I'm allowed to firstly accept it, be honest with myself, realize, yes, I have done that, realize that that is not what I want now, and it's not what I want for the rest of my path, the rest of my life or my spiritual journey, then the mind relinquishes it. This is wisdom. When it relinquishes it, the mind feels free. It feels more open, more relaxed. And then when you're in that situation in the future, in the same situation where you harmed that person and all those people, you find yourself in the same situation, your wisdom arises and goes, you remember the forgiveness that you did? You remember how you had to do that and work through that? Actually, I guess I call myself a bit lazy. I don't think I'm really lazy, but it seems like laziness. I want to do forgiveness now because I'm too lazy to do forgiveness in the future. So I want to stop causing the suffering now so that I don't have to do forgiveness again in the future. So that's also how it works. And this is how karma works. This is how good karma works, especially. We can see how bad karma works, and that is if you're unaware of your past, unaware of your speech, actions, and thoughts in the past that cause suffering, then without that awareness, you will continue to repeat those cycles. And it will go on and on until you do become aware of it and you do wake up. And the waking up is the wisdom and realizing, man, I'm just harming myself and I'm harming others. And there's nobody else can stop this. Nobody else can do anything about this. Oh, they could say they're sorry, or, we could talk about it or something. but that's not it. It's when you realize through your own experience that is not what I want to do. I don't want to continue to live in this suffering, creating more suffering, feeling guilty from what I've done, feeling bad, etc. Only I can set myself free from this. So it's a nice realization, nice experience. So then, as I said, we come back and we back to the first step. So I'll just go through those points again, just in case anyone was writing them down, or just to get a little bit more of a flow through the sequence. The first question is, who did I harm? Let somebody pop up in your mind. Then ask the simple questions. How did I harm this person? Was it speech, action, thought, or all of these? Why did I harm them? Was I selfish or greedy? Was I angry? Or was I confused? Or maybe all of these? Was I aware when I harmed this person? Usually not. Was I wise when I harmed them? Pretty much definitely not. Am I sorry? Yeah, I'm sorry. That's how I was in the past. It's not how I am now. I'm changing, or I want to change. I'm working on myself. This is why I'm doing forgiveness. I'm learning about myself. And it's not how I want to be in the future. So I forgive myself. Really what this means is I'm forgiving myself as I was at that time. If you like, you can include the present moment. I'm forgive myself as I am now. But what it really means, I'm forgiving the person I was at that time, or how I was at that time. I forgive myself. And say that as many times as you like. Let it soak into your mind. Understand the meaning of these words. And see how it feels. Check it. Use your mindfulness to monitor the feeling of those words. I forgive myself. How does it feel? And you may have to do this forgiveness practice with that same person several times. I don't know how many times you may have to do it, but every time you do it, you get a little bit more clear. You become a little bit closer to the truth. And it's a little bit easier to let go of. Some situations, you do it once and you feel light, you feel free, and it's like, oh, it's so nice. Other times you feel, wow, I'm probably going to come back to this person. Come back and do this forgiveness again with this person. And then, after you say, I forgive myself, then say, may he be free from suffering. May she be free from suffering. And you can do it again. Start again. Who did I harm? Any person, any other person. For some of us who've lived a somewhat wild life, or maybe a rough life, hard life, complicated life, unfortunately we've harmed a lot of people along the way. And sometimes when you start forgiveness, it's a bit daunting when you look back into your past and go, oh, my Buddha, there's a few thousand people in this queue waiting for me to forgive them, or for me to forgive myself for harming these people. But don't be put off by that. Just come back to doing one person at a time. And as I said, it's a little bit of an illusion when you look back into your past like that. You may see that there are so many people, but you may also realize that the way that you harmed one person was actually the way you harm many people. And if you're forgiving yourself for harming in that way, you're forgiving the way, the mental state, the cause, the root cause for the suffering, not person by person and situation by situation. So sometimes you can blow away a lot of internal suffering and internal attachment to past situations just by dealing with one person or a few people. So don't be put off by the fact that there are many people in your past that you may feel you need to forgive. So that's the first step of forgiveness. It's, of course, to be able to contact that person. The best way for you to really clear that up would actually be to meet the person, to see them face to face, which needs to take, you need to be a little bit discreet about this, because depending on the person, if they happen to have a shotgun or something, or if they're particularly violent, or probably, as you may know, they may be still angry, then it's best not to confront them out of the blue and go, "Hi, remember me 20 years ago? I hurt you." They may not be receptive. So you need to be a little subtle about it, a little sensitive. But if you can, and you feel it's appropriate, you can contact the person. You could send an email, you could maybe find them on Facebook, you could message them, text them, call them, or if appropriate, you could meet with the person. And you need to be subtle about it, you need to be gentle about it. But something simple like, I'm working on myself, and I realised that when I was with you, or when we worked together, or whatever it was, I realised that I was greedy, or I was angry, I was confused, and it was a difficult time for me, perhaps. And I realised that I harmed you, and I would like to ask for your forgiveness. So you can do this with even with your current partner. It doesn't have to be someone who's disappeared into the mist of your, I was going to say the mist of your history, the mist of your past. It could be someone who's still in your life. For example, I still do it with my mum. I've done it several times, and every now and again I just reiterate it. I just say it again, because I was a bit of a reckless kid and didn't care too much for authority, and always wanted to do what I wanted to do, and directly or indirectly harmed my mum. Unfortunately, my dad's not around, so I have to do forgiveness with regard to my father more through prayer, or through some determination, or intention, and which answers the question, if the person is no longer in your life, especially if they've passed away, how do you do forgiveness? Then you can do it by prayer. You can do it through a spiritual teacher, if you like, or even in a spiritual place. Could be in a church, or wherever you may have had whatever sort of medium that person lived by, or it could be in a favourite place that you shared with that person, or it could be just thinking about that person and basically saying, wherever you are, wherever you've been reborn, whatever life you're in, I realise I harmed you, please forgive me. And we don't know exactly if, how the universe delivers such mail or messages, but you can try, and it's certainly your own intention that is the most important thing here. You can't be sure that that person receives your asking for forgiveness, but if you yourself, in your own mind, have forgiven yourself and you are directing it towards that person, then this is also a breaking down of your ego. It's practicing humility, and which is a wonderful and beautiful thing for your life and especially your spiritual practice. So you can practice it like that by through prayer, through sending out that positive asking for forgiveness. If it's a person who's still alive, then you can contact them and ask them, obviously being sensitive and careful about that. Or if you don't want to contact them or you feel it's not appropriate, the most important thing is that you forgive yourself. And that's what the bottom line comes down to. It's about you setting your mind free. If you asked someone for forgiveness and they said, "No, you're an idiot, you're stupid, I hate you, get out of here," or, they start abusing you or something, and they say, "No, I will never forgive you, I hate you," then you have to realize, we have to realize, that this is not our karma. Okay, it's our karma that this person's saying this thing, but they have their own karma. And if they're not ready to forgive, it actually has nothing to do with you. The most important thing is that you are able to forgive yourself. And this is an amazing lesson in life. And that's why I asked the question, do you believe you can forgive yourself? Are you allowed to forgive yourself? Do you understand what self-forgiveness really means? Is it possible? Is it true? Does it really happen? Otherwise, if it's not true, then it means that forgiveness is always dependent upon somebody else. And how can we live our life dependent upon somebody else forgiving us? And this is a tricky situation where in this human world, and I sort of say that as opposed to the karmic law or the law of karma, which only operates by cause and effect. It's an impersonal process. As opposed to our human world, which works on personal process and works on punishment and reward. This is how human beings operate. Karma is always operating anyway, but as humans we work on punishment and reward. And somebody could do something wrong and be put in prison. A man or a woman, anybody could create or harm somebody, perhaps even murder, and then be put in prison. But they could immediately wake up, realize what they've done wrong, forgive themselves, and actually be totally purified in their mind. It's happened all throughout history, where people have been put into prison and they've basically become angels. Even those that have been on death row, in fact many of them that have been sentenced to death row, somebody wants to come in I think, I'm not sure. Yeah. Some of these people who have been sentenced to death row, they even have a date, the date that they're going to die. There's not many human beings who know exactly the date they're going to die. And they have accepted it, fully accepted it. And they've gone beyond. It's like they died before they died. And you've heard about this in meditation. It's a common term that people will say. You have to die before you die. You have to die in meditation, which is the relinquishing of the ego. And this can be done even in prison, when somebody who realizes what they've done wrong and they can actually forgive themselves. It's weird, but they don't need to be in prison anymore. I saw some documentary recently, and there was this beautiful, beautiful man. He's out of prison now, but he is teaching. Actually, he wasn't a Buddhist, but he was almost everything that he said was Buddhist, and he was some African American guy. And the words he spoke were so beautiful, and he spent so many years in jail, like 20, 25 years in jail. He finally got released, and he's just the most beautiful man. He looks like half a house, and, you know, with graffiti on it. You know, he's got tattoos and everything. But just, you can see by his look how he would have been, you know, 25 years ago, and you hear the words and the smile and the way he talks now. It's, you know, he could be just sitting here talking to you guys. It's just beautiful love in his expression and everything. Complete transformation. We could say, oh, that was the prison system that did that. But I don't think the prison system really teaches people to do that. It's your own karma. And this is your own ability to forgive yourself and to set your own mind free. And we all have this ability. So this is a nice beginning to our forgiveness practice, to forgive ourselves for harming others. Do you have any questions about this first step of forgiveness? Anything pop up in your mind while I was talking? Yeah.
Is that kind of like Jesus' the way that teach about redemption, forgiveness, how it transforms people through living Christ?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think what we can do, if Christians and people of other faiths realize that Christ nature or God nature or whatever nature that is, it's within them. When they connect with that. See, people ask Jesus for redemption, or they go to the church, and in Catholicism they go to the Catholic priest and do confession with the Catholic priest, as if the Catholic priest is saying, yes, you know, you're a good boy now, you can go off and do what you like. Is the power in somebody else, or is the power only within you? And any Catholic will tell you, it doesn't matter how many times you go and ask for forgiveness from the priest, if you can't cheat yourself, you can't trick yourself. Oh, okay, the priest said I'm okay, so I'm good to go for another week until next Sunday when I have to go back, so I can do all these things wrong this week. But even a silly person wouldn't really believe that. They might believe it, but perhaps not for too long. So we realize that it's the Christ within us, the Jesus, the God, the whatever being or whatever power that we understand is within us, or sometimes we think it's external from us, which it is also, but it's also within us. That power is also part of your own power. You are connected to that power and you can forgive yourself. So this is what I believe, how it fits in perfectly with all religions. And all religions teach forgiveness. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
Often, like in a relationship, you'll have both parties hurting each other. So how do you tie in to where you hurt them and they hurt you?
Yeah. It will come up a little bit later in the second and third sections, but it's actually dependent upon your partner or the other person also practicing forgiveness. So you can do it on your side, and this is the question that many people do ask, is that, okay, I forgive them for harming me. This is the third step, actually, and I don't like jumping to the third step, but people still ask this question. If I forgive somebody for harming me, won't they just continue to do it? And then there needs to be some way of educating that person that they are becoming, so that they become self-aware and they realize that perhaps they're even harming themselves by harming me, etc. So we'll work that out a little bit later on in the next segment. But at this point, even if somebody has harmed you 100 times and you only harmed them once, it's that one occasion that you are forgiving yourself for harming them. So you're putting aside all the justification, all the stories about how they harmed you and what they did wrong. It's not about them. And this is where I use the word objective. And it comes back to, what did I do? I know that's subjective towards me, but objective with regard to the story. We're not getting sucked back in and justifying, well, she said that and he was wrong and whatever. It's just, what did I do wrong? And how did I do it? And how do I feel about it? Am I sorry about it? And sometimes you're not. Okay, drop it. See, go on to another person. But if you feel sorry about it, then this is your feeling and this is what you're working with. So, yeah. It's very different to work from that perspective. But it's always good if you have a partner that's willing to work with you on these things, and when you're developing forgiveness in yourself, that they also feel that they would like to develop forgiveness in themselves. And if you can both do it, that is really, really amazing. It's very powerful. It's also very difficult. It's very difficult to, especially if you've been with someone for maybe 20, 30, whatever years, and you've had all these arguments and, you know, you've brought kids up and been through all these things, that we're carrying all this past stuff with us. It's really hard to just look them in the eye, you know, perfectly honestly, and ask for forgiveness, and for them to ask for forgiveness from you, and for you to be able to forgive yourself at the same time, and then to be able to work with that. And this is where I said that it starts to come up on a daily basis, especially if you are with a person who is really committed to themselves becoming a better person. And you yourself are committed to becoming a better person. And so you want to become a better couple together for the sake of your own sanity, for the sake of the vows that you took 20, 30 years ago, etc. And so that you can live together in harmony. It's difficult, but it's extremely powerful. Yeah. And this is how we learn to bless ourselves. Quite often in religion, even in Buddhism, you'll find people coming to be blessed by monks and by others, etc. And in the Buddha's teachings, in the especially in the Theravada Buddhist teachings, there's a teaching called the Mangala Sutta. The Mangala Sutta is the teaching of blessings. And right in that sutta, the Buddha points out all the ways that you can bless yourself. And it's really interesting that in Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, when people go for blessings from monks, this is one of the suttas that the monks will chant in order to bless the people. But in actual fact, if you understand the meaning of the words, what they're telling the people is how you're supposed to bless yourselves. And if you bless yourself, you don't need to go to a Buddhist monk to get a blessing. But we all are our own blessings. Blessings, I was going to say, don't come from outside. I think your blessings come from your ability to understand what so-called blessings may come from outside, but also your understanding that you have the right and the ability to bless yourself. And this is what forgiveness is. I also call it a miracle. It is a little human miracle that very ordinary people can perform on themselves, by themselves. And it manifests into your relationships. So I'll leave you with that little miracle, and we'll have a little break for 5 or 10 minutes or something.
So good afternoon everyone, welcome to the Metta Centre. So good to familiarise yourself here and to meet you all here. There's some new faces and some people who've come from other places as well. And we were doing a bit of market research just now in terms of where people have come from, and they really have come from all over Sydney. Yeah.
Wow.